introduce our panelists. First, please give a nice warm round of applause for the executive producer of the Apollo Theater, Ms. Camilla Forbes. Next, please welcome one of the wonderful producers of this documentary, Lisa Cortes. And of course, last but certainly not least, the director of this amazing film, Mr. Roger Ross Williams. Before we get started, let's just give another round of applause for that film. All right, I have plenty of questions. I'm so excited to be here doing this. As a young woman who grew up in Syracuse, New York, watching the Apollo on television all the time and reading about it, this is just an awesome experience. Before I jump in though, I want to know, Roger and Lisa, are there any folks that you would like to thank, or would you like to have some opening words before we start the Q&A?
I'd like to thank Roger's mother, because she birthed and brought into the world an amazing man.
You're gonna make me cry, Lisa.
And my father, who brought me here to see the 10 Commandments, and after the 5th commandment, he said, "Let's go, we know how this ends."
You're at the Apollo.
All right, well, let's do it.
Well, actually, I want to thank somebody.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I would love to thank, before you dive into the questions, on behalf of the Apollo, I want to thank Lisa Cortes and Roger Ross Williams for making such a beautiful homage to this amazing institution. You took such care to who we are and who we are becoming. And on behalf of that, and also centering our culture and Blackness at every moment. So thank you.
So my first question is for all three of you. You can just jump in wherever you want. But this project has been in development since 2012. And as some of you may or may not know, there was already a documentary done of the Apollo in 1985. And so what at that point made this an important film? What was the genesis of deciding to make the Apollo film at that time?
So I actually wasn't here during that time when that film was, during several iterations. My first day at the Apollo, it was, I knew that there was a documentary being made, but my first day it was announced that Roger was named the new director of the film, and I got extremely excited. And I think there was always an effort to document and codify the history here. The previous documentary was in sort of an outside company. I think that the Apollo institution was not necessarily at the table in the same way. And this documentary, I think, really is such a huge reflection of truly who we are.
And Lisa, how long have you been involved in the project? Can you kind of answer what it was like and what kind of inspired the project in 2012?
I've been involved like around 3.5 years. I ran into Roger at Sundance, and he's like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm doing something with you. What are we gonna do?" And he invited me to join this journey with the other producers who had started and been there for the genesis, and being here in Harlem and from the music business and now film. And just being a big fan of Roger and his work. He's being very humble tonight, even though he's wearing leopard. But he's truly an OG in a young body.
I'm going to just get to the question that probably all the audience wants to ask, which is, when you have so many performers, you have, Michael Jackson, Fela Kuti, Bob Marley, Diana Ross, who have been at the Apollo. How did you decide who to include and who not to include?
Well, so it is overwhelming to tackle 85 years of history, but the Apollo is a town hall. It's the center of Black culture, not only in Harlem, but in America. And so for me, it was about, when music on this stage is political. You know, we have used music and art to lift ourselves out of oppression and segregation and slavery, and we continue to do that. So when artists hit this stage, like Billie Holiday, for the first time singing "Strange Fruit," which was a protest song, you know, all the way through James Brown and the Black and I'm Proud, even the Temptations in their subtle way and their slick Italian suits, that staying political and telling that story was the way to tell the story of the Apollo. And so if I stayed true to that and we stayed focused on that, then the choices were obvious who to use and how to tell it.
When you started the project, when the project started, I should say, Nikki Shepard was the executive producer at the Apollo. And now, of course, it's Camilla Forbes. And in the film, we really get to witness her creative process. And I'm wondering how much did her creative process and her influence as the executive producer change the direction of the film or the tone of the film?
I think when we interviewed Camilla, and she said, Roger's like, what are you doing next? And she said, I'm going to start Between the World and Me. I saw this fire come out of his head, and he's like, we're going to be there. And I think it was a part of a spine that we were looking for, a way to reference the past and be in the present. Because what's very important about this film is that the Apollo is not a museum. You know, it is a living institution with an incredible future. And what is better than Between the World and Me to give voice to our past, but also to look towards where we're moving towards.
Yeah, and it's also about showing how much has not changed. You know, that was really important. You know, things have changed, but things have not changed in America. It's still open season on young Black men in America. This has happened in 34. If you look through the history of Harlem over and over and over again, it's the same story. It's the same thing. And no one speaks to that more than Ta-Nehisi and his work. And he's the James Baldwin of our time. He's unbelievable. And you know, so when Camila told me, and she just kind of just sort of it was sort of like she just said, "Oh, by the way," and I was like, "By the way, this is it." I had my hook. And following that process and watching this woman work, I learned so much as a director watching her work and work with the actors. It was amazing. I mean, I go back and look at that footage I'm doing my first narrative film, and I go back to watch her because she was mic'd, so I could hear her talking to the actors, the notes she's giving them. I'm like, she's brilliant. So that was a no-brainer.
I was trying to whisper so nobody can hear.
And then we would stick a camera right up your nostrils. Thank you.
Yeah, I kept wanting to call you the creative director. Oh, no, she's the executive producer, but your process seems so creative, and so you work so closely with the artists. Is that new for the Apollo? Has a person in your position always done that?
Well, not always in this way. I think that, you know, Nikki was brilliant because, you know, she had to dream the possibility of what it meant as a nonprofit and what does that look like? And how do you be creative in kind of building systems and structures? And I think that as an institution now, we are all having to be creative to really vision the possibility of our future. And we're all in that place, right? I think I approach it as an artist. I approach institution building as an artist, fundraising as an artist, and you know, and it just allows me to be even that much more expansive as an arts administrator.
So, you know, of course, the star of this film is the Apollo Theater, and to me, the film kind of shows the role the Apollo plays in the Black community throughout history, right? In 1934, it was a place where we could come and rejoice and get free of the oppression that was outside the doors that we face every day. Then, of course, Percy Sutton bought the place in 1981, which to me made this place a real symbol of Black empowerment. and self-determination. And then it became an institution, a nonprofit, which modeled institution building at a time when a lot of Black institutions were failing. And so I'm wondering today, what's the role of the Apollo? How does the Apollo shine hope today?
Well, I think we continue to be the center of the Black community, not only here in Harlem, New York City, nationally and globally. I mean, we see the institution as the center of a national center for Black culture and creativity.
And international.
And absolutely international is exactly right. So I think we are building on our legacy. We are moving into two new spaces down the street as well, expanding to the Apollo Performing Arts Center in 2020, next year. I think it's continuing the growth of our mission of cultivating artists, audiences, and a celebration and deepening and pushing Black culture forward, and collaboration with other Harlem arts organizations. I mean, we'll be collaborating with you, with Image Nation, with an amazing new series called Cocktails and Cinema on November 21st, a film series here at the Apollo. In addition to continuing to commission artists who we believe will redefine the 21st century canon with Black voices at the center.
Awesome. That's awesome. Isn't that awesome? Roger, I have a question for you. When I was watching the film, I was really struck by those aerial shots of 125th Street. And I felt when I was watching it, like, oh my gosh, this just makes me feel like, not only is Harlem like the small town for the Black world, but the Apollo Theater is town hall. And those shots really just struck me, made me feel so connected to not only this community, but this building. And I'm wondering, how did you achieve those shots? They almost look painted. They don't even look like real shots at some point. So how did you achieve them? And what was your goal when you chose those shots?
Yeah. Well, the drones. Those drone shots came sort of at the end of the process by my brilliant editor, Jean Chen. She's like, how do we really incorporate 125th Street and Harlem? And Jean got up early at 5 in the morning while I was still in bed, and actually found these amazing drone artists and shot all of those drone shots and directed all of those drone shots, because not only is she an incredible editor, she's also, where is Jean?
Right here.
Oh, there she is! Oh my God, Don, I see a team, Don Fisher. So, I can't take any credit for that. That is totally Jean.
Okay, but they look so beautiful. Just, what was it, the color correction, the lighting?
Because she has an amazing eye. She has an amazing eye. She also, all of those beautiful B-roll shots of people on the streets in Harlem, those transition shots. Jean, the cop cars, there were like 5 cop cars that crossed like perfectly each other, perfect. She could just make magic happen. She just stood up.
Lisa, I know you have deep roots in Harlem. So tell me, as a producer on this film, what were the parts that were hard for you to let go of? Did you feel any pressure as a person who has real roots in this community? Did you have to argue about some of the things that needed to come out or stay in? Tell us what was your connection as the Harlemite?
I think our entire team was truly committed to embracing, elevating, and making certain that we always found the beauty in our community. Even if they weren't from here, I made certain it became their community. We crawled all over this theater. We had cameras up people's noses, and they were everyone just embraced the process. Tonight is really special because the people here tonight are the people that matter most to us, and I'm so grateful that you all came out. Thank you.
the shipment notes were a really wonderful tool that you used throughout the film. How did you come across the shipment notes? And were there other pieces of or artifacts that you had to let go that you might have wanted to include?
There were tons of things we had to let go of. You know, that's what kind of directing is letting go. There were so Lisa, this woman right here, crawled through people's basements to find footage, to find old photographs. She came back with mold-covered, dusty boxes. She was an amazing sleuth during this whole process, and really left no stone unturned. So it's really Lisa.
And my John manager threw it off.
So how did you find those notes, and did you know they were going to have a,
there's a
key role in the
wonderful
film when you found them?
Well, there's an exhibition that the Apollo had done with Smithsonian, so there were some materials that were noted there, and they became the breadcrumbs that we then said, okay, can we find more? And then we talked to someone, and they'd say, go have coffee with Smitty. Smitty will tell you where certain things are hidden. So, there was like that kind of journey. My grandfather's church is still here. I spoke to people in this congregation. Their producing partners, White Horse, had put a call to action for people to send stuff. So we continuously, threw the net out, and people just gave us some real unique footage and stills that have never been seen before.
The Breckner family saw a posting I did put on Facebook and contacted me on Facebook Messenger and said, we have all these notes from my father, which were the note, not the cards, but the notebooks, the old notebooks, and that's how we got those. So it's a treasure hunt.
One of the things I loved was Joe Gray's story. I think that was just a really beautiful story and kind of magical. I know Joe's still back.
Joe is in the back. Joe Gray, come out. Joe.
Is he back there? I don't know. Yeah, I think he might be coming.
Well, I thought that was really a wonderful story, as was Bianca's trek to the Apollo.
Oh, here he is. Mr. Joe Gray.
Joe's on tour today.
This man is the Apollo. Come on.
That was an incredible story. To me, that was like, that's why people come here. The opportunity to go from stagehand to stage star and to play here that many times. And Bianca's story, someone who had come from far away, really carrying her city on her back. Those are really beautiful stories. What were the stories that we missed that we didn't get to see?
What's beautiful about the Apollo is that the Apollo, what you said in the film, the access to people who don't normally have access. Anyone can walk in off the street and audition for amateur night. And anyone can win amateur night. And some of the greatest names in our history, some of the greatest performers in our history have won amateur night. So that's what the Apollo is. It's an entry point for Black people who don't necessarily have that opportunity. And that's what's so beautiful about it. We followed amateur night for a number of years. And there was so many talented artists and so many talented performers, and we could have made a whole film about amateur night. We could have made 100 films. There was about this 85 years of history. So we had to make choices. What is it about amateur night that is important? It's the access. It's that access point for the people in this community, for the people in this country. And now people come, what was amazing, people come from all over the world to perform on this stage in amateur night. And there's a lot of Japanese, there's plane loads of Japanese that come to perform at amateur night. And there was one point where I was like, I'm going to Japan, and I'm gonna follow, every time, you go down some roads, and I'm gonna follow artists from Japan, because there's what's his name, the guy in Harlem who trains Japanese performers.
Right.
does the tours,
He
etc.
does the tours. I mean, Japanese beatboxers have won amateur night many times and won Super Top Dog. So the legacy of the Apollo is like just spread throughout the world, and that's a whole other thing. So.
I have a story we had to leave out. You know, Luther Vandross was the head of the LaBelle fan club, and he used to come backstage to see them before he became famous, and somebody gave him some clothing that they found that he would then sell to them. But it was very nice clothing. It was like boosted.
That's an awesome story.
You couldn't put that story in.
It's an awesome story.
There would be these guys who would sell to the performers. They would sell clothes at the stage door. They would sell stuff that fell off the truck, as they would say, at the stage door. So the costumes, a lot of the costumes were like hot.
And if you want to hear more stories, actually, I encourage you all to take a historic tour with Mr. Billy Mitchell, because he will give you some stories, Mr. Apollo.
And Camilla, I'm going to end with you. You know, the Apollo, I guess, has been known as a place where stars are born and legends are made. If there was a new mantra, and if there's a message that you want this film to carry, what would that be?
Wow, if there's a new mantra, I think it's where American culture is created. Thank you.
So the film will start showing on HBO on November 6th. Please tell all your friends and family to check it out on HBO on November 6th. And please come back November 21st for Image Nation's Cocktails and Cinema. We'll be showing the film Clemency, starring Alfre Woodard. It won Sundance, and the director is the first Black woman to ever win Sundance. And Alfre is they're saying she's going to win an Oscar for this one. So come see it at the Apollo.